Hi everyone. In this lecture, I will write a Twitter client to use Twitter v2 API. After Twitter introduced v2 API, Twitter4j library stopped working for new developer accounts. And I started getting complaints about this. As you see with a new Twitter developer account, I get this error while trying to stream tweets from Twitter API. And in the error, it is suggested to use v2 filtered and sample volume stream as alternatives. For this reason, I will now write a custom Twitter stream client to be able to stream data from Twitter v2 API. I will still keep the Twitter4j code here and write the new code as a new implementation of the Stream Runner interface and trigger Twitter4j listener class. Please also note that the next lecture still covers a mock Twitter implementation, which is another implementation of Stream Runner interface, and it will also trigger Twitter4j listener. So currently you can use either this new v2 client or the mock version in the next lecture. And in the future, when Twitter4j library is updated to use Twitter v2, you may also switch back to Twitter4j implementation. So you will have multiple options to stream tweets. Alright, I will use the official filtered stream demo example from the Twitter developer GitHub page. This is a working example to stream tweets. I will get this code and use it in our Spring Boot microservice. You may download the source code including these v2 API changes in the resources section of this lecture. I will start changing the POM.xml file. I will add HTTP clients and JSON dependencies. Let's add these dependencies into the base POM.xml file with versions. And then I can use it in the Twitter to Kafka service POM.xml file without versions. These two dependencies are required to use the code in the filtered stream demo Java file as you see here. Then I will change the application YAML configuration file. I will add Twitter v2 base URL configuration variable. This will be apitwitter.com with version 2. You can see the URI for this endpoint here in this page, in the OpenAPI JSON file for v2 Twitter API. Here I also add tweet fields created at and expansions author ID, because I want to use the same fields that I was using with Twitter4j library, so I will get created at and user ID fields using this URL. This author ID will give me the user ID. Then I will add another URL, Twitter v2 rules base URL. This URL will be used to set the rules for my stream. So actually, I will set my filtered keywords using this rules endpoint and then start streaming data using the base URL. I will use the same bearer token for both endpoints. So Twitter API will remember my rules when I call the base URL to stream the tweets. So for this bearer token, I will add another configuration variable, Twitter v2 bearer token. I will use Twitter bearer token environment variable. Please use export Twitter bearer token, or better, update your environment variables permanently with this token value, and then restart IntelliJ. Otherwise, it cannot see the environment variable changes directly. You may find this bearer token in your developer accounts in the Keys and Tokens section, as you can see here. Now I will also add enable v2 tvits configuration value and set as true. I will use this to load my new v2 implementation instead of the old Twitter4j implementation. Let's also add these new configuration values to the Twitter to Kafka service config data Java class. I will add string Twitter v2 base URL, string Twitter v2 rules base URL, and string Twitter v2 bearer token. Here I will not add enable v2 tvits because I will not use it through Java object. Now I will create a mirror of the Twitter official example and I will not write it from scratch. Instead, I will go over it briefly and show you my changes here. I will create Twitter v2 stream helper class. In this class, I have component annotation, so it is a Spring managed bean. Then I have conditional on property annotation to load this class only if enable v2 tvits configuration variable is set to true. Conditional on property annotation allows me to load a Spring bean at runtime using a configuration value. So here this class will only be loaded if enable v2 tvits is set to true. I have Twitter to Kafka service config data and Twitter Kafka status listener fields injected here. And I have the JSON representation of a tweet to create a JSON object similar to the Twitter4j library. Then I use Twitter status date formats to format the tweet date correctly. As you see, I have injected the fields here using constructor injection. Here I have two package private methods, connectStream and setupRules. SetupRules gets the current rules, deletes them, and creates new rules. In each rules method, I use Twitter v2 rules base URL configuration variable and call the endpoint using bearer token. I use Apache HTTP client to call the API. This is the same code from the official Twitter example as you see. Then in the connectStream methods, I call the actual stream endpoints and get the tweets continuously using a buffered reader. As you see, I am using Apache HTTP client again to call the API and pass the bearer token for authorization. In the while loop, I get the current line and then call getFormatedTweet method. In this method, I extract the tweet data and get created@, ID, text, and author ID values. As you see, I format the date using the correct formatter and also escape the double quotes in the tweet text. Then I use the tweet as raw JSON variable to create the exact same tweet message as in the Twitter4j library. Then I create a Twitter4j status object using Twitter object factory createStatus method. Finally, I call the Twitter Kafka status listener onStatus method. As you see, I still used the Twitter4j way to consume the tweets, because I was using this previously even in the mock version. Unfortunately, the library is not working at the moment with Twitter v2 API. So I do this trick to create some kind of a wrapper around Twitter4j classes. Now I will create the implementation class for StreamRunner using this helper class. Let's create Twitter v2 Kafka Stream Runner and implement StreamRunner interface and then override start method. Here I will add components and conditional on property annotations and only load this class if enable v2 tweets set to true in the application configuration. Now I will go to Twitter Kafka Stream Runner and use the conditional on property annotation also there. This time I will use having value false. So this class will only be loaded if enable v2 tweets set to false. Here I will add log variable and then add Twitter to Kafka service config data and Twitter v2 stream helper fields. I will use constructor to inject these fields, and as you see I use the new Twitter v2 stream helper class here. In the start method, I will first get the bearer token from the configuration. If the bearer token is null, I will log an error message and throw a runtime exception. Otherwise, I will first call setupRules method on Twitter v2 stream helper object and pass the bearer token and rules. For the rules, let's create a new method, getRules. Here I will return a map with string key and string value. Let's first get the keywords from the configuration. I will use these keywords to filter my tweets and to set my rules. Then I will create a hash map instance and set the keywords into this map. For key, I will simply set the keyword as it is, and for the value, which is a tag, I will write keyword prefix and then set the keywords itself. Let's log an info message here and return the rules. Then in the start methods, I will call connectStream methods, passing the bearer token as parameter. I will create a try-catch statement here and log an error message and then throw a runtime exception in case an error occurs during setupRules or connectStream operations. I don't need these throw statements anymore, so I will delete it. In the getRules method, I will add a check on this if block with JSON has data. This way, when we call the API first time and when there is no rule, we won't get a parse error. Now to prepare the code for the mock implementation in the next lecture, as a final change in Twitter v2 Kafka Stream Runner class, I will remove the conditional on property annotation and instead use conditional on expression annotation. Because in the next lecture, I will also introduce a mock Twitter implementation and it will be enabled with another config property, enable mock tweets. So here to clearly define the correct runtime Spring Bean, I will use conditional on expression, which enables writing complex expressions to choose the correct runtime bean. I will load this class if enable v2 tweets set to true and if enable mock tweets is set to false. I will use the same annotation in the Stream Helper class. So I will enable mock_tweets config property here and set to false for now. As I mentioned, normally this config variable only required in the next lecture when writing the mock implementation, but since I had to create a new v2 implementation, I make this change also here. Then I will change the Twitter Kafka stream runner and again use conditional on expression, this time with enable mock tweets, and for enable v2 tweets I will use not expression. So this class will be loaded only when the enable mock tweets set to true and enable v2 tweets set to false. So when you implement the mock version in the next lecture, please be sure you have the correct conditional expression in each candidate for the stream runner implementation. Alright, I will continue with the mock Twitter implementation in the next lecture. As I mentioned, you may use this v2 implementation or the mock implementation to continue with the course. Just set up the config properties correctly and use conditional on property and conditional on expression annotations correctly. Especially if you have a difficulty getting a Twitter developer account, you can continue to the course by just using the mock implementation that will be introduced in the next lecture. Please be sure you have these changes in your code because in the resources of the coming lectures, when you download the zip files, you will not be able to find these v2 clients, as I have added these recently because of the Twitter API changes. Now let's run the codes and see if we can get the tweets from the Twitter v2 API. As you see, I can see the tweets in the logs. Great, I will see you in the next lecture to continue with the mock Twitter implementation.